On May 9th, 2023, Reddit user Sask100 posted an image of a message they received when visiting YouTube. It reads, "Ad blockers are not allowed on YouTube. It looks like you may be using an ad blocker. Ads allow YouTube to stay free for billions of users worldwide. You can go ad-free with YouTube Premium, and creators can still get paid from your subscription." And then it gives you the option to either allow YouTube ads or try YouTube Premium. About a day later, a YouTube employee confirmed with the subreddit moderator that this was in fact real. IGN also reached out to them for comment, and an employee told them the following: "We're running a small experiment globally that urges viewers with ad blockers enabled to allow ads on YouTube or try YouTube Premium. Ad blocker detection is not new, and other publishers regularly ask viewers to disable ad blockers." Just because they say it's a small experiment, though, doesn't mean that you shouldn't worry. Small scale means that they're testing the waters to see how many people are going to go, "I guess I'll pay for Premium then." And then if YouTube's revenue from new memberships increase at a higher rate than any revenue lost due to users viewing less content, then they're going to see it as a success, and it's going to go from a small-scale experiment to a large-scale one as they roll it out in other regions. Now, before anyone starts talking about legality or freedom of speech or whatever, it is well within YouTube's rights to have these policies in their terms of service. And we all understand that they want ad revenue to fund server costs and maximize profits. Let's not pretend that they're bleeding money here, though. And inversely, the right to use ad blockers also exists. In Germany, you have multiple court cases outright saying that ad blockers are legal. Meanwhile, I'm not an attorney, but you do have some fundamental concepts of law that an actual legal expert might use to say that an express contract or an implied contract is not inherently formed or enforceable just because you visit a website and agree to the terms. You also have historical cases that aren't inherently about ad blocking, but are kind of in the same area, such as cases regarding property modification, website click wrappers, or even the Sony Betamax Supreme Court case, where the judge ruled that recording a program and fast-forwarding through the commercials is legal. Fun fact, some DVRs and VCRs actually have the ability to automatically detect and skip commercials, so sponsor block has kind of been around for decades now. For the sake of proper transparency, though, how an ad is circumvented can still be an issue in certain circumstances. And there's also plenty of ways to design a website so that a contract is much more enforceable, but we'll leave the actual discussion of legal hypotheticals to an actual attorney. Back to what I am qualified to say, though, certain data privacy laws, such as the GDPR, can make certain ad block detection methods illegal, and even government agencies, such as the FBI, say you should be using them for your own safety. And now let's talk about the Cobra effect, a phenomenon that many of you have witnessed throughout history but may not have known about as a defined concept. The Cobra effect is essentially when someone tries to fix a problem, but their efforts either end up making the problem worse or creating a new problem entirely. The alleged origin story was that back in the 1900s, when India was still under British rule, India had a cobra problem. The British came up with a solution of offering a bounty on dead cobras to encourage the residents to kill them and reduce the population. Instead, the residents just began breeding the cobras so that they could easily kill them and collect the bounty. Then when the British caught on and canceled the program, all the cobras being bred were released into the wild, and then the cobra population was actually higher than before the program started. Now, I say alleged because, due to the fact that most of history is lost to time, we don't have definitive proof that this event ever happened, but the name Cobra effect still stuck, and the concept is very much real, so I want you to keep it in mind when you think about the never-ending battle between ads and ad blockers. Many advertising companies are actually okay with ad blockers because they know that most of those people are never actually going to click on the ads served to them. So the remaining people who don't use ad blockers who see the ad, they're more likely to actually click it. And then that higher click-through rate is better for the advertisers, which allows the website owners to in turn go look at our success rate to attract more people to advertise with them. By forcing a large population of people who are not only never going to click an ad, but are never going to pay for YouTube Premium to now view the ads, then that means that the click-through rate is going to decrease, and then the companies are going to pull out and advertise elsewhere because their campaigns are not as effective anymore. You also have to accept the reality that there are many more options besides pay with your time or pay with your money. There's always going to be other solutions such as take your time elsewhere or find any other alternative solution. In the comments section of that same Reddit thread, one user posted a link to a website called YouTube, spelled differently. This is a mirrored version of the main YouTube site that doesn't have any advertisements on it. I, along with many other people, would have never known this website ever existed if it wasn't for YouTube taking such an aggressive anti-ad blocker stance. Additionally, YouTube's new experiment caused me to discover a browser add-on called Ad Nauseam. This works by blocking your ads like normal, but in the background it clicks every single one of them. And this is so that advertisers can't build a profile on you because it looks like you just click every single ad. But this does end up meaning that the advertisers are getting their money wasted because all their ads are being clicked but not actually viewed. So if YouTube begins to more aggressively enforce their anti-ad block stance, the ad block developers aren't just going to go, I guess I'll pack my bags and head home then. They're going to find a way to one-up it, and then we might see more ad blockers that work just like this, so that they're spoofing YouTube into thinking you've allowed ads by clicking them, but then the ads aren't actually being served, and it's going to waste more and more advertiser money, which makes their campaigns less effective and causes less of them to want to advertise with YouTube. And even if a particular method does eventually become illegal, it's not really going to matter because of how few changes you have to actually make to make it legal again. One pretty recent gray area example I can think of is with YouTube Vanced. This was a third-party YouTube APK for Android that enabled ad block and sponsor block, but it was discontinued due to legal threats, and this was likely because it also enabled certain premium features such as the pop-out window or the ability to listen to a video even when your phone screen was powered off. And now you have the spiritual successor, YouTube Revanced, and the main loophole here is that instead of providing you with a third-party APK, it just kind of teaches you how to build your own mod yourself. So realistically speaking, the whack-a-mole game is just never going to go away. When it comes to people and advertisements as a whole, many people are actually okay with advertisements, but only to a reasonable extent. You have apps, such as Duolingo, that serves you an ad at the end of each lesson. But people also voluntarily choose to view a second unskippable ad for a small reward within the app. Many of my fellow Americans probably watch the Super Bowl and have a favorite Super Bowl ad that you'll even go onto YouTube to watch. Meanwhile, one of my all-time favorite ads was for a Wii game back in 2008, Wario Land Shake It. As you watch a trailer, the entire web page would break apart and you could even drag elements of it around afterwards. You can't do it anymore on the modern YouTube webpage, but thankfully users such as Video Game Clip Collect and Nuke JP have preserved this ad. So think about that for a moment. I'm talking about how I'm glad that an ad was preserved. And I'm not the only person who's ever said that, because you have entire compilations of commercials on YouTube with millions of views and millions of positive comments. So if people tolerate ads and even have ads that they like, what YouTube and other companies need to be asking themselves is, why are people using ad blockers on our website in the first place? And the answer comes down to the quantity of the ads and the quality of them. People who use ad blockers didn't start out using them on day one. They browsed the internet like normal until they reached a tipping point where they said, enough is enough, and then they went out to find an ad blocker. Many people were pretty understanding and tolerant of a single pre-roll ad, skippable or not, but then as that number continued to grow, more and more people hit that breaking point and just said, enough is enough, there's gotta be a better way. And now that we've reached the point where enough people sat together in a room and said, serving 5 to 10 unskippable ads at a time sounds like a brilliant idea, how could anyone be surprised that more people than ever are using ad blockers? And many people do value their time as a currency, sometimes just as much or even more than money. So as the monetary price or the chronological price increases, demand is going to decrease. But perhaps the bigger issue at hand for many people is not the quantity of the ads, but the quality of the ads. Most viewers on YouTube aren't receiving average, ordinary, family-friendly ads. You got hustle bros with their get-rich-quick scams. You got multi-level marketing ads where hidden in their income disclosure statement, it reveals that 99% of people lose money. You have games that are deceptively nothing like the advertisement, some of which include blatant copyright infringement to deceive users, sketchy websites that may contain spyware and malware, and vulgar adult content to the point where YouTubers such as SaberSpark have talked about them, only for him to get in trouble for showing the exact footage that advertisers are still allowed to show. Meanwhile, if you are using something such as Sponsor Block, you may have never even heard of various sketchy sponsors such as established titles until YouTubers such as Scott Schaefer started covering them. And because people aren't asking basic questions such as, is this company allowed to use this IP to advertise? Or, if this title were legally binding, why aren't the locals using it? Why aren't there more lords and ladies in Scotland than there are Saudi princes if it's this easy? This means that you are significantly safer by using ad blockers and sponsor blockers, and that's why so many government agencies, such as the FBI, says you should be using them. Now, because bad advertisers usually just get a slap on the wrist instead of any form of legal or civil penalties, does that mean that you can never expect the company or the people who run these sketchy advertisements to accept responsibility and compensate the viewers when they demonstrate a complete lack of quality control and promote these ads which give them a sense of legitimacy before the advertisements exploit the viewers? Of course not. I'm not an attorney, so take this next bit with a grain of salt, but I do think that this distinct lack of accountability may actually be part of the reason why you don't see companies actively trying to lobby and change the laws to restrict the use of ad blockers. With the current system, there's so many intermediaries between a website and the ads that they run that they all get to point the fingers at each other and play the blame game whenever something goes awry. If they push too hard to try and change the laws, it could have a Cobra effect for them by creating stricter regulations for internet advertising. It could create more distinct guidelines on someone getting in trouble for making an ad with a fake close button or a fake download link, and it could even create an opportunity for website owners themselves to be held liable for damages if they fail to implement quality control and then their ads go on to harm the viewers. After Enron collapsed and the Sarbanes-Oxley Act passed in 2002, it created a new standard where CEOs and CFOs had to legally certify all financial statements as accurate, and they could face very steep civil or legal penalties if they certified a statement that was false or misleading. While it did scare some people into compliance very quickly, it also caused nearly 500 companies to just voluntarily delist themselves from stock exchanges because they were really scared about now having their name on that paper. And I imagine that if you're in the advertising industry, you don't want to run the risk of having to certify the ads on a site as safe. Many of the specifics of that topic are still much better suited for a legal expert. But from a business perspective, it makes much more sense to maintain the ambiguity and then shift the blame to the ad block users whenever the topic comes up. Now let's have a fun look at distancing layers and how small details can make a huge difference. Let's pretend that you're watching TV with your family. The commercials come on, so you hit the mute button. But then a family member turns to you and says, "Hey, you can't mute the TV during the commercials. That's theft." And then you watch and give all sorts of personal information to the network owners and cable provider. And when you look at some of the patents that have been filed over the years, it's not even a far stretch of the imagination to say that people have actually flirted with the idea of having your TV watch you to make sure that you watch your advertisements. Now let's pretend that you're at the local park with a friend. There's a man with a megaphone screaming about all the hot singles in your area. And then when you ignore him and walk past him, your friend says, "You can't just do that. He paid to advertise here so that freeloaders like you don't have to pay to enter the park. He is entitled to have you listen to his entire speech." And then when you finally meet your obligation and try to leave, the man purposely bumps into you, forcing you to give him personal information. Most people would never tolerate these conditions in a physical setting, but then make one small change as to the technology being used to serve you an ad, and then the mentality in some people changes. And this phenomenon of distancing layers via technology is actually really common. Think of how many friends you have that would never fall for a traditional multi-level marketing scheme, get-rich-quick scam, penny stock pump and dump. But then you change the technology to, say, cryptocurrency, and then some of those red flags just subconsciously go away. I've seen real-life examples of people who on one hand are aware enough to say, all these influencers trying to shill this penny stock just want to pump and dump me. But then, later on, they say, yeah, I really do think that this doggy-themed token with no utility is going to 100x, so I better get in quick. And you might even know somebody who went, I'm not going to give this RuneScape scammer my go. Oh my goodness, Obama's doubling my Bitcoin on Twitter. So many new scams are just old scams with new technology because of these very same psychological distancing barriers that we subconsciously create. Now let's discuss price discrimination, specifically third-degree price discrimination, where specific demographics are charged different amounts. If you go to, say, a museum, you might notice that different groups pay different prices. If you only think about things in terms of profits, you may think that you're losing out on potential money by not charging equal prices. But all value is subjective, and you want to find that perfect ratio of price to demand for each group in order to maximize your profits. That college student discount isn't because they think that college students are better than other groups of people. It's because they generally have less income, so they're less likely to be able to show up in the first place if they have to pay full price. Meanwhile, that senior citizen discount is because so many of them grew up used to things being cheaper that if you charge them full price, they're more likely to hit that cutoff point and say, this is just too much, it's not worth it. And then in this example, military getting free admission is going to be because there are just so many competitive free attractions in the area that if they have to pay anything, they're just going to take their time elsewhere. But this doesn't mean that they cause huge losses for the museum every time they show up. There are other ways they can contribute to the profits, such as buying food, drinks, or souvenirs. And there are other non-monetary benefits too, such as contributing to good PR for the museum, and the military members are contributing to the higher metrics that the museums get to use to entice partnerships and investors. And now let's apply a third-degree price discrimination model to YouTube. In the United States, premium membership is currently $11.99 per month, but you can't charge that same rate equally across every single country. Between factors such as exchange rate, minimum wage, purchasing power, cost of living, if you try to apply the same price to every single country, you're going to have several countries where they go, well, the price of premium is more than I make in a month, so I can't even afford this in the first place. So then with strategic pricing in mind, at the very bottom you have the ad block users. Currently, they do not see the subjective value of the time price, and they do not see the subjective value of the monetary price of premium either. So many of these customers are ones who would just not waste as much time on YouTube, or may even leave YouTube altogether if they were forced to pay in one form or another. They still have ways to contribute value though. Some disable their ad blockers for their favorite creator, some buy super chats, but most importantly, they still contribute watch data and other analytics that allows YouTube to say, look at our overwhelming market share, and then all that data is what attracts so many investors in the first place. YouTube would love it if these people help them earn more money, but anybody saying that they contribute nothing of value to YouTube is objectively and demonstrably wrong, especially when every single viewer doubles as a product, which is likely a huge reason why YouTube could go banning users with ad blockers, but they don't. If the free users of YouTube were really this much of a drain on profits, then it would have stopped being a free service a long time ago. It would have either become paid only, or they would have limited the amount of free content for non-paying users. When you think of who is a stakeholder in a company, what's the first thing that comes to mind? You probably think, anyone who owns stock or invested money directly into the company. And while those are in fact stakeholders, they're not the only ones. One of the most important stakeholders is the customer. One of the most grossly misrepresented quotes of all time is, the customer is always right in matters of taste. A lot of us tend to ignore that second half and think that it means people need to bend over backwards to please us. But what it really means is that the best product or service is the ones that the people choose. And if so many users are choosing to access YouTube in any other way besides the default settings, well, that's just the free market speaking. If not enough people are buying your premium service, then it means that the current tactic of creating a problem in order to sell a solution is not enough, and you have to create more incentives to buy. But to be completely fair to YouTube here, this is an uphill battle that they face because of the way that we perceive rewards. Let's pretend that we live in a fantasy world where somebody actually made a good play-to-earn video game. Everything looks good on paper. People play video games for free, and people even pay to play video games. So introducing a reward means that people should really enjoy playing your game if it's good. So at first you have a bunch of people playing, selling, you got buyers, and people who are playing non-stop make $200 a week. Sounds good, but then over time, basic factors such as supply being sold outweighing demand being bought, and then people just having to settle for selling for less, your average goes from $200 a week to $100 a week. Well, plenty of people are still happy because they still like the game, and before, they were playing games for free. But then, as the trend continues, you go from making $200 a week to, say, $50 or $25, and then more and more people are just saying, this isn't worth it anymore. It doesn't matter that the game on its own was actually considered good, because once you introduce rewards to it, you cannot scale them back. And this is essentially what has happened to many longtime YouTubers. It used to be that you would exchange your time, and your reward, instead of being $100, it would be 100% pure YouTube video with no ads. But then over time, your reward goes from 100% video to 90% video, 10% ad, and then as it goes further and further, eventually most people hit that point where they say this payout rate isn't enough. And even if you do pay, not all of the problems go away. Right now, free YouTube with legal add-ons is far better than paid YouTube, so can you really blame anyone for not seeing the value of premium? YouTube really does have to start thinking outside of the box to bundle enough perks that people say, I see how this service provides value that free YouTube could never possibly provide me. Just like with the Netflix and piracy thing, if you make the paid options better than the free options, people will pay for it. On the much more emotionally charged subjective side of things, you will see an endless back and forth between one person saying, they shouldn't have expected it to be free forever, and then them saying, well, they've crossed the fine line between necessity to survive and greed, but I won't get too into that. I think the universal takeaway we can get from those arguments are trying to insult your customer base to get them to pay is generally a bad business idea. It's not working for Twitter, and it's not working for people trying to lock previously basic features behind paywalls. Something I found out as I was trying to grab a few headlines is that AdBlock Plus actually does have a quality control program where they do permit non-intrusive ads through the ad blockers. I can't give a properly qualified opinion on it because I've never used it, and I do have a few initial concerns, such as potential conflict of interest arising from the same group that approves the ads also being paid by the advertiser. But the customer is always right in matters of taste, and 500 million downloads implies that people tolerate tolerable ads. Many people would gladly disable ad blockers for their favorite creators if it was safe to do so. If you already do disable your ad blocker for your favorite website or content creator, that's fine, you're allowed to. And inversely, that website or content creator is allowed to politely ask if you're willing to do so. But if they're uploading to YouTube instead of, say, Netflix, well, they should also respect your decision if you say no, because we were all aware of this possibility as we got into YouTube. And look, we all like the idea of having more money with less effort as opposed to less money with more effort. I am no exception to that rule, but if somebody is crossing that line between politely asking and trying to guilt trip you or coerce you, well, chances are they are either 1, not fully aware of the risks it poses to you, and that's not entirely their fault, which is why I like to say don't hate, educate. Or 2, they have been fully educated on the risks it poses to you, and they are willing to expose you to that risk in order to make money off of you. So in conclusion, if you want people to not use ad blockers on your website, you got to make the quantity and the quality of them tolerable. Forced compliance will only make things worse for everyone, not just the viewers, but the advertisers and the website hosts. But in a world where kids get ads for adult content and vapes, where recovering addicts receive targeted ads for gambling and alcohol, where enabling ads can put you at risk even if you don't click them, where we have so many fake download ads that people need guides written for avoiding the fake ones with malware, and where even Google accidentally allows the first result for YouTube to lead you to a fake Microsoft Windows tech support, good luck convincing anybody to surf the web of digital STDs without a digital condom, especially when YouTube's own employees get caught using ad blockers. Don't let people shift the blame to you, the victims, who just want to stay safe. Let the people who created and enabled the problem to fix their own problem. One final fun fact before I wrap everything up, Ethan Zuckerman, the inventor of the pop-up ad, has apologized for it, and he went on to call advertising the original sin of the web. And while I won't excuse his actions, in his defense, if he didn't invent it, somebody else definitely would have. And he also has done some noteworthy things in his life afterwards. He set up the internet in third world countries, and he resigned from MIT after he found out about his lab's ties to Jeffrey Epstein. So I wouldn't necessarily call him evil. My question of the day for you all is, for those of you who use an ad blocker, what was your breaking point? What caused you to finally say, enough is enough, I can't handle these ads anymore? Let me know in the comments below. That's all I got for now. Have a wonderful day.